there is evil within the hearts of all ponies. Such is the balance of nature. Good can only be prevalent for so long before evil musters its forces and seizes upon the heart, twisting friendship into war, loyalty into deceit, and kindness into unadulterated hate. Unknown author, 622 BL. Screams echoed through the cloud palace of Rainbow Dash's home. The filly startled wide awake in a cold sweat, terror surging through her veins. Nightmares. Again. The 7th time this month. And it was always the same one. The one with the cupcakes. Flashes of memory laced through her head. Wings being hacked off, then ripped from their sockets. Needles plunged into her beating heart. Adrenaline injected into her body to keep her awake and alert as the torture went on. The smell of her own flesh cooking, the sight of her own blood and gore spilling from her surgically incised belly, the mastermind behind her terror toying with those glistening organs like they were party favors. She knew in her heart that Pinkie-Pie would never be capable of doing such a gruesome act. But that thought didn't help to make the dreams any less vivid. The Pegasus pony sobbed openly, curling up in her blanket and rocking back and forth as her body trembled with fear. She hadn't told anyone about the dreams, about the lingering feeling of steel piercing flesh and blade cutting bone. Her work had suffered because of the constant night terrors and the nightmares being so powerful that she was simply afraid to go back to sleep. Some nights, she stayed up altogether in an attempt to stave off the horrors for just one more night. And every pony wondered why she spent most of her day napping in the open, in the daylight, because in the shining brilliance of the sun, it was the only way she could actually rest. Even then, though, the black clutches of her fear-addled subconscious began to creep into that relative safety, following her through to the dreaming world. Dash whimpered as tears streaked down her face, staining the fur of her cheeks as wide eyes darted around the darkness of her room. Heart pounding in her chest as breath became more hiccuping sobs than anything. Her wings clung tightly against her form as paranoia began to clutch to the edges of her mind. Shadows lurched and moved in her peripheral vision. Routine, natural noises became distorted and echoing in her mind as adrenaline surged through her shivering form. This was not healthy. Her mind was slowly breaking under the horrors of her subconscious mind. Things that no pony should ever have the slightest thought about are chipping away at her psyche. She was starting to crack. Rainbow Dash! Rainbow Dash! Hey! Has any pony seen Rainbow Dash around? Applejack trotted around the streets of Ponyville, looking high and low for the town's residents' speedster pony. Bystanders just shook their head and shrugged. Horse feathers! Figures that pony's nowhere to be seen when you really need her. The cow pony sighed and continued through town, hoofbeats kicking up dust as she looked to the sky for the Pegasus pony. Consarn it, Rainbow Dash! Where in the world of Equestria are you? A long yawn from the branches of a tree behind her met her with her answer. The pony in question, dipping a head down and gazing at Applejack from upside-down position. What, Applejack? What is it that is so important you've got to interrupt my napping? The western pony stomped a hoof on the ground and scolded the Pegasus. Now you know just why I'm making a fuss to find you. You said you were going to bring over a little rainstorm for the crops at Sweet Apple Acres nearly 2 hours ago. Instead, I find you out here in a tree, snoozing. You're a little behind off. Dash gave a groan, sloping out of the tree and landing on her hooves, shaking her head. She looked more deceived than ever, and her mane was a mess, dark bags under her eyes from many a sleepless night. She looked pale, sickly almost, yet still tried to put on an air of cheerfulness. She heaved a yawn before giving a dismissive wave to Applejack. Yeah, keep your saddle on. I'll get right to it now. Sorry and stuff." As the Pegasus pony turned and spread her wings to take off, Applejack tilted her head to the side and gave a little frown. Dash? You feeling okay? You look a little, under the weather." Dash grumbled, shrugging her shoulders as she gave her wings a little test flap. "I'm fine," was the only response from the Pegasus. The cow pony behind her stepped forward, giving Dash's side a little nudge with her snout. "You sure about that?" She was cut off as the Pegasus suddenly jerked away from Applejack, darting up into the air as her eyes went wide. Don't touch me. I'm fine. Honest. Just..." She nearly spilled the beans right then and there, but refrained. She couldn't take the chance that the other pony might think differently of her because she was being scared out of her mind every night by some stupid nightmare. Her body gave her a little shiver as Applejack looked at her with concern. Gotta go." Before Applejack could say anything further, Dash went off like a rocket towards Sweet Apple Acres, leaving the cow pony just to scratch her head in confusion. That girl ain't right. Another terror-filled night. Dash lay curled on the floor of her cloud house, blankets swathed around her shivering form. It was worse this time. She had been flayed open, set upon the dining table of the Pink Earth pony, as slabs of her own meat, dripping with her life fluids, were sheared from her flanks and served to all of her friends. Herself, still somehow alive enough to be aware of the entire situation. Hearing the laughter as they devoured her living form as forks and knives dug into her innards, tearing her apart. She was nothing more than a slab of meat for her friends' enjoyment. Hiccups punctured through heavy sobs as the Pegasus pony clutched her head. The visions of that nightmare had been visiting upon her, ingrained within her memory. Every horrible detail, from the fiery pain of rended flesh to the sickening sounds of innards being torn and ripped out of her belly, was cast in vivid depiction. She whined as she lay curled tightly upon the floor, sniffing as tears gushed from her eyes. "Just leave me alone." "Why won't you leave me alone?" she hiccuped, rocking back and forth. "I don't deserve this. Just stay out. Stay out of my head." "Get out of my head, please. Just get out of my head!" Fear turned to anger, Dash beating her hooves against her temples. "Get out, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out!" She wept openly, grinding her forehead against the floor of her room, hooves pounding and pounding at her head, bruising her flesh as pent-up frustration and sleep deprivation erupted in agonizing screams of rage and sorrow. Another night. Another crack in the window. Every pony had noticed it. It was the way she walked, the way she talked. Her body language just screamed it. Gone was Rainbow Dash, that cheerful, brash speedster, replaced by some hollow shell. She drifted aimlessly over Ponyville, as weeks of interrupted sleep had taken its toll upon her. All of her friends knew that something was up, but none of them knew exactly what to do. She had pushed them away when they had tried to comfort her, lashing out like a wounded animal any time they tried to console her or plead her to get help. Too headstrong, some would say, too proud, others still. But none of them realized the gravity of the situation until that one fateful day that Rainbow Dash finally snapped. It had been unseasonably warm spring day in Ponyville. Every pony was out enjoying the temperate weather, from foals to colts, and then some. Every pony went about their business. Lyra and Bonbon chatting it up beneath their usual table at the cafe. Applejack selling the first harvest from Sweet Apple Acres as ponies lined up for those ruby delicacies. And within the candy corner, Pinkie-Pie was busy darting to and fro in the kitchen, baking up a storm. She glanced at the clock every now and then, frowning each time, before the bell to the door finally rang open. A haggard-looking Rainbow Dash entered the shop. "Rainbow, you're finally here. Oh, I've been so worried about you. We've been all mopsy-dopsy, so I thought I'd ask you to come here and help me visit and be ultra super special and cheer you up. But then you didn't show up, and I thought you were going to, and I was all sad, and you were going to stay cooped up in your house all day, but then you came, and now you're here. Now we can have some fun." Dash merely looked at her blankly, before shaking her head and stumbling forward. "Whatever, Pinkie. What did you want me here for?" The energetic Earth Pony bounced into the kitchen, over towards one of the many ovens in the candy corner before pulling the door down, reaching in and pulling out a tray of fluffy, puffy cupcakes with a generous slathering of icing atop them. She spun around, grinning widely as she showed the baked goods off to Dash. "I made you cupcakes!" Dash paled. Mind flashed back to the earliest of those nightmares, the most vivid, the most intense. A tray of cupcakes. Tasting it. Finding motor skills rapidly deteriorating. Stumbling as her body shut down under the effects of some unknown drug. Pinkie-Pie looming over her with that trademark grin. Eyes gleaming as the world dimmed around her. And here it was, happening for real. Vision had become blurred as the world around her began to spin. The Pegasus stumbled back, and shaking her head, whispered under her breath, "No, no, 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 no!" She backed up, eyes wide with fear, as she shook her head violently, looking around frantically for a way out. Any way out. The window? The door? "No, I don't want him. Not gonna let you... let me out of here! Let me out of here!" Pinkie merely tilted her head to the side quizzically, setting the tray down and lifting a few of the cakes out and plating them, bouncing over to the shivering Rainbow Dash, and offering the plate to the Pegasus. Dash stared at them. They were the same color. Same kind. "Run," a voice in her head said. "Run. Run, you idiot. Run." A hoof flashed out, smacking the plate out of Pinkie-Pie's hooves. "I said I don't want them! I don't know what. I know what you're doing. It's not going to work." Pinkie-Pie frowned at the discarded cupcakes, but in typical Pinkie fashion, she just shrugged and went about cleaning them out, humming to herself. "Maybe you don't like the avocado icing? That's okay. I made plenty more, so we can make some to your liking. Is that okay, Rainbow? Dash?" She glanced back, the Pegasus pony letting out a panicked whimper, and eyes fixated on the pony before her, pupils nearly pinpricks, as fear and adrenaline coursed through her veins. She was pinned between Pinkie and the wall behind her, chest heaving with heavy gasps. Her sleep-deprived, horror-filled mind played the scene from her nightmares over and over again, of the saw rendering through flesh, cutting through bone. Run. Get away. Scalpel piercing her breast, dragging through her flesh down to her groin, flaying her open like some sort of sick piñata. Move. Just get away. Get away. Get away. She was hyperventilating now, no longer seeing a longtime friend, but a horrific, sadistic butcher. Do something. Then she saw it. That shining, sharp projector, just sitting there on the table next to her. The voice within her mind whispered to her like a seductive lover, sounding so wrong, but so right at the same time. Kill her. Dash hesitated. Part of her wanted to scream, another to run. But yet another considered the request. Kill her before she kills you. Her mind was a maelstrom of conflicting thoughts. The Pegasus, feeling sick to her stomach, weak in the knees, the beat of her own heart pounding within her head. Take the knife. She stared at it, hoof slowly stretching out, trembling as part of her still tried to reason. Take it. Take the knife. Tears streaming down her face as a hoof hovered over the handle of the tool, turning the weapon. As if the last frayed strands of her sanity knew what was going to happen, knew that it was a fighting battle, that it was going to lose. Take it. She snatched it up, holding it out in front of her at Pinkie-Pie with shaky hooves. Her ears splayed black against her head, hiccuping between sobs. Just leave me alone. Please. Pinkie-Pie. Just leave me alone. Pinkie-Pie looked at the knife being wielded by her friend for a moment, before giggling and bouncing over towards Dash, whose heart sank as the filly rapidly approached. Oh, Dash, you silly filly. You got me good with that one. Never wanted to turn down an opportunity to prank. Huh? She didn't think. Her body acted on its own. A gasp. Pinkie-Pie looking thunderstruck as Dash heaved, frozen in mid-strife. The silvery blade of the knife dripping with red ichor. Pinkie-Pie brought a hoof to her cheek, dabbing at the wide cut, looking at her own blood-stained hoof. Dash? I told you to stay away. Why couldn't you just stay away? Kill her. No. She's my friend. I can't. I... Kill her, and the hurting will stop. Please. Pinkie, run. Just run. Oh, God, please don't make me do this. Kill her. Kill her, kill her, kill her, kill her, kill her. What happened next was a blur. The memories fuzzy in Dash's mind as Pinkie-Pie tried to scream, or tried to make sense of the sudden attack upon her person. Dash let out a chilling mix between a wail and a scream, catching the Earth Pony off guard as the blade darted forward, slashing through her neck, severing vein and artery as a gout of crimson issued forth from the wound. Shock and surprise registered on Pinkie's face as she gargled, blood hemorrhaging from that wound, staining her pink fur with the red hue of her life essence. Again and again, that silver blade struck out, Dash's speed not restricted to her flight as she plunged the blade into the filly before a rapid pace, sobbing hysterically as she carved the squirming and flailing filly through breast, through bone. Pinkie-Pie's struggles slowly faded as her blood was spilt onto the ground of Candy Corner's kitchen, pooling around her, splattering the Pegasus atop her with the red fluid. "Just leave me alone!" she screamed out, fear turning to rage. "You just couldn't go away, could you? You had to keep coming back!" Pinkie's struggles grew weaker and weaker, her eyes wide with terror as tears streamed down her face, visage frozen in a mix of fear and anguish. What did she do? Was it the icing? Did she use salt instead of sugar? Why? As those slowly glazing eyes stared up at Dash, the strikes of the blade grew slower and slower. The Pegasus finally plunged the implement deep into Pinkie-Pie's chest, spearing through the filly's heart, ending her party once and for all. Dash heaved for breath, limbs shaking as she looked down at her handiwork. Blood stained her fur and feathers, painting her a deep crimson, wearing the life force of her former friend like some macabre outfit. She sobbed, letting it out in a wail of anguish as she realized the gravity of what she had just done. Arms wrapped around the butchered filly, Dash holding the still warm corpse of her friend tight. No. No, 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 no. I didn't. Oh, Celestia. No. What have I done? What did I do? Dash's body shook as her chest heaved with each gut-wrenching cry of anguish, suddenly letting go of Pinkie-Pie's body and letting out an ear-pitching shriek of terror as she looked at her own hooves. Blood coated them, dripping down through her fur, the scene straight from a horror movie laid before her eyes. She skidded backwards, slipping in a pool of blood of her own creation, slamming cheek first into the pile of gore before finally gaining purchase and dragging herself over against the furthest wall from Pinkie's still form. Her stomach was in turmoil as she emptied its contents to the floor next to her. Her mind raced, thoughts running a mile a minute as she hiccuped, wide, terror-filled eyes staring at the scene made of her own hoof. Murder. She had committed murder on one of her own friends. It was unheard of. No pony had been murdered. Another in hundreds of years. Voices within her mind clawed and whispered to her, the world spinning around her as time seemed to stand still for her, the last vestiges of her sanity being plucked apart, one by one, until that final thread snapped. Hooves grasped at her head, matting her rainbow-colored mane down with blood and ichor. The Pegasus rocking back and forth in the blooded kitchen as a crazed grin spread across her muzzle, humming disjointedly to herself. Giggle at the ghastly, snortle at the spooky. Dash threw her head back, curling legs against her chest as forelimbs wrapped around them, psychotic laughter issuing forth from the speedster's Pegasus as her world shattered around her, psyche and spirit broken and splintered.